Hello, beautiful people. In today's episode, I get the pleasure of speaking to Joel Runyon. And Joel is an athlete and entrepreneur and writer who is the founder of Impossible, a company dedicated to helping people push their limits and do quote unquote impossible things. In 2017, he became the youngest person to run 7 ultramarathons on 7 continents. And in this conversation, we spoke about the impact that David Goggins has had on his life and a couple of different challenges that he has done because of Goggins. Super fascinating conversation. Joel's a really interesting dude. If you enjoyed this conversation and it inspires you, let me know on Twitter at HeyDannyMiranda. And without further ado, let's get right into it.
Interesting people, thought-provoking conversations, nutrition for your brain. Journey through the minds of the world's top performers and discover what it really takes to achieve your highest version. This is the Danny Miranda Podcast.
Tell people a little bit about yourself for someone who's never really heard of you before.
Yeah, so my name's Joel Runyon. I run a site called Impossible. It's about pushing your limits and taking on big, impossible, usually physical challenges. I got started when I was in college. I graduated from college, did things that most people you think you're supposed to do: get a good GPA, do all the classes you're supposed to do, learn another language. I had a double major, and I was on just the path that most people do. And I graduated, and the next step in that journey is get a job. And I graduated in the middle of the 2009 recession, and that job situation was just not available. Like a lot of places I was applying to were not hiring. Places I was excited or interested in doing were not excited and interested in hiring me. And so I started applying to my B options and my C options, and eventually applying to places like Starbucks, to make coffee, or Target to stock shelves, and they wouldn't call me back. So it was pretty disillusioning to do all the things that you were supposed to do. I had great GPA, bilingual, all this stuff, and getting to a point where it's like, oh, the roadmap, the story that's been laid out for you is not really anything that's it's really not it's not playing out well for you right now. And so my whole story is I'm basically unemployed for 9 months, got a part-time job at UPS during the holidays. They laid us off after the holidays, slinging boxes during the Christmas rush. And then I end up back home in my parents' basement 9 months after graduation, and wondering, is this all I have to show for, doing all the things you're supposed to do? And, I had friends doing really cool stuff. I had friends, traveling around the world. I had one friend going to every country in the world. I had another friend, he just quit his job and went to Thailand. And I wanted to do all these things, but they felt like other people could do them, not me. And so, I really want to do that stuff, but everything kind of felt impossible. And so I kind of felt bad for myself for a while, and kind of wrote a list of all the things that I didn't feel like I could do. And just kind of felt bad for myself, watched other people tell good stories, and, watched Netflix for a little bit. And I kind of kept doing that until eventually I ran out of, it was 2009, so the Netflix library wasn't that big. So I kind of ran out of shows eventually. And, I kind of took another look at the list, and I had a lot of reasons and a lot of excuses for why I couldn't do all the things on it. Reasons for why I couldn't, travel to every country in the world. I had reasons for why I couldn't quit a job. I couldn't even get a job. But one of the items on the list was, train and run for a triathlon. And I didn't have any background in triathlons. I didn't know anyone who had done a triathlon before. And I did, barely knew what 3 sports were included in a triathlon even. But I was like, there's no reason why I can't go outside and run around my block. There's no reason why I can't get on a bike and ride around a block. And when I realized that, I signed up for the race and I started training for it. And then, a month and a half later, I did my first indoor triathlon. It was an indoor triathlon at Lifetime Fitness because I was so scared at that point that I would be like able to, I wouldn't be able to make it in an open water swim. So I did it indoors at Lifetime Fitness. It was a 10-minute swim, a 30-minute bike ride, and a 20-minute run. And then you add up your distance at the end of it. And I finished that race. And I remember thinking to myself at the end of it, you spent so long telling yourself that this was impossible and you just did it. If that's the case, what other things could you do that you currently think are impossible if you just trained for it? And so that kind of started this evolution of doing an indoor triathlon to actually doing triathlons, outdoor triathlons, and doing an Olympic, doing a half Ironman. Like I said, I kind of tricked myself at that point into running because the last running portion of a half Ironman is a half marathon. So I was like, okay, I'm doing a half marathons now, I guess. Got into marathons, had a charity challenge me to run an ultra marathon for charity, and then kind of, tipped over into this world of endurance and ultra endurance sports. Ended up running an ultra marathon on every continent in the world to raise money for charity. And yeah, that's kind of sort of been the evolution of Joel, if you will. It's been, learning to use these endurance challenges to, push yourself and make yourself not just physically stronger, but mentally stronger so that you can take that same mentality and use it in other areas in your life.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I love everything you're about. And the coolest thing to me about checking out that impossible list, which you could check out at the show notes, DannyMiranda.com/podcast. We'll have those all in there, is just that you had something as small as a 10K, right, on that impossible list. And it just goes to show, and then you go into running ultra marathons, and it's like it seems like such a far place, but what you did was you just did the first thing in front of you, whether that was the indoor triathlon, which was just 10, 20, 30, a little bit here, a little bit there too. And then you realize everything's the same, right? And you could just extend out your training. And if you realize you can accomplish one thing, that means you can accomplish a bunch of different things. So really inspiring stuff, man. And it's just awesome to see.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the impossible list. A lot of people liken the impossible list to a bucket list, but I think it's quite a bit different. A lot of people talk about a bucket list and they get excited and they make a big, huge bucket list, right out the gate, and they get all excited about it. But then they expend all their excitement. They get all the dopamine rushes from making the list and they never actually do anything. And the impossible list is a little bit of the inverse. Like, you start off with the smallest thing possible that you can do. And for me, that was an indoor triathlon, not even a real triathlon, an indoor triathlon. And I was able to do it. And then that gave me the momentum and the boost to do the next few things on the list. And that's kind of where things started to take off.
Yeah. And I think that people underestimate the importance of getting those small wins. And just even if it's meditation or eating right, it's like if you can string together a couple of days in a row of doing exactly what you need to do, you're just in a completely different place. And it's just those small wins. So one thing
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about was one of the most recent challenges that you did. And that's the 4x4 by 50 by 48. And you made it into 52. And it's crazy, man, because this is David Goggins and he created this. And so what were you thinking when you did it, and what changed? Like, did you have any difference of your thinking after it was complete than when you started?
Yeah, so quick rundown on the 4x4 by 48 challenge. It's a 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And Goggins does this once a year or something like that. And if you guys don't know who David Goggins is, he's a big ultra marathoner, motivational speaker guy. And what's funny about David, I don't know if you know this, but I actually ran into David back in 2011, 2012 when I was first starting out. And he was one of the main motivations for starting ultra marathons and running. And he was not a public speaker. He was doing some fundraising stuff, but he wasn't the guy that he is now. And actually, at one point, I think I owned davidgoggins.com. I had picked it up. I saw like some Chinese domain squatter was like sitting on the domain. And I was like, they're not going to do this to David. Like, I'm going to go get that. So I got the domain. And then like a couple years later, like 2 years ago or something like that, he reached out and he's like, hey, can I get the domain? I'm like, yeah, dude, I got it for you. But Goggins is like this, he's an animal. And so he put out this challenge, and this was right before COVID hit. And I was starting to be like, I'd been, just heads down working or whatever. And I realized like I needed a challenge. So I went out and did it. And I mean, it's tough. Like it's 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. It's not really like that far of a distance each time, but you have to be consistent about it. And the hardest part, in my opinion, is you don't get sleep. Like your sleep schedule gets all jacked up, which is, in my opinion, much harder than the running. Because at some point, like you can handle the running. It's just like, you get 3 hours in between and you're just constantly going. So that was the hardest part for me. I thought, I basically got done with it, and I don't like to just finish challenges and like just barely squeak through. I like to try to add one more, do one extra, and like it's just kind of a good way to finish stuff. And so I got to 48, and I realized 52 is basically 26.2 miles twice, right? So it's a double marathon, and I was like, well, that seems like it's a meaningless number, but it gives it a little bit more meaning to me. So instead of just stopping short at 4x4x48, I did extra 4. And I think at that point I was kind of hobbling around. Like it wasn't even like, good miles, but I knocked him out, and it ends up being, you run like, 2 marathons in 2 days. And to me, that was like a much, kind of a much better ending than just being like, hey, yeah, I just barely, did 4x4x48. I did the full thing. So, yeah.
So, a couple of questions. First is about the davidgoggins.com. You just gave that to him for free, or you got a nice chunk of change for that? How'd that go out, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't want anything from him. David had done, he was the motivation for me starting out. So, it was one of those things where I got the name and I got it for him. I didn't, he was running a blog spot, like his ex-wife, I think, had run a blog spot camp, updating about his races for a while. And so, but that was really the only presence he had. But, I didn't really want anything from David. I think, we might do a run or something, in the future. But I wanted, he asked for the domain. And I was like, yeah, dude, I got it for you. So
yeah,
happy to make that happen.
It's an awesome story, and it reminds me of one that Gary Vaynerchuk was big into domains when he was younger, and he was just getting started into the whole online game, and he saw KanyeWest.com was available, and he gave KanyeWest.com to Kanye for free. So it made me think of that, and it's pretty crazy and very interesting. Just speaks to your intentions and who you are as a person. So big ups to you. So one thing that stuck out about what you're talking about with the 4x4x52 is just the go one more mentality, and the idea of, you're going to finish something. Okay, great. Do it again. Do one thing more, add a little more to the challenge. And I love that. That's so important to me. So talk a little bit about the importance of that.
I mean, it's easy, especially when you're doing these endurance things, to just like, you get to the point where everything hurts, right? And everything's tiring, and like you're worn out and you want to quit. And, for me, the whole point of the endurance challenges is, what you do when you get to that point. Like what decisions do you make when you get to the point where you want to give up and you want to quit? So I try to do that. We've done a couple different challenges, like a lot of the ultras that I'll do. If there's like a way to do an extra lap, I try to do an extra lap. I did thing with Jesse Itzler. If you're familiar with him, he does a thing called Hell on the Hill. And every time, you basically go up and down the hill 100 times. I try to do like an extra lap every single time. And it's just a good way to I think one of the things that people run into is learning to trust themselves and learning to be able to know that they can do those hard, difficult things. And I think, a lot of times they'll do an accomplishment and they just do exactly what needs to be done to hit the goal. So they'll do the 100 hills, or they'll do the 50 miles. But I always think there's something, where you can do an extra lap for you. You basically, mark your stamp on it. You don't just say hey, I accomplished the goal. I came here to do what, I did. But then you can also be and I did a little extra, and that one's, that's for me. It's whether it's remembering something on the last lap, or just, really remembering that hey, even if I missed a lap, I did an extra one. There's no way that I'm going to, talk myself out of this accomplishment in the future, because, I know, what I showed up and was able to accomplish. So
how was that sleep when you finished the 4x4x52? How'd that feel?
It was weird. Honestly, that was weird. It was just you're just kind of delirious at one point. I wasn't even sleeping in my bed, in between, you're trying to get 2 and, some hours of change, of sleep in between each round. And it was just the weekend. So it was okay, I guess that this is what I'm doing all weekend. And, it's the sleeping at night was a little bit easier, and you're getting up and you're running out at 4 or 6 in the morning, and it's really not that bad. But then, you're trying to get 2 hours of sleep at noon or 4 p.m. That's super weird. And it just, you're all over the place, and, you're trying not to sleep too long, so you can get back out there and keep running. But, I thought that was by far, I thought that was easily the hardest part of the whole challenge, was the sleep stuff. I thought the running was difficult, but I've run 48 miles before. And this was spaced out, so it was more the sleep that got to me than anything else.
Yeah, and how was the sleep when you finished? Was it the best sleep you've ever had?
I don't know. I think it was I think I was definitely probably more tired. I've been more tired in other situations. I thought it was a hard challenge. I didn't think it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was. Anytime you finish that. Typically when I finish those things, I'll have a huge pizza, take a shower, hobble to my bed, and just crash out for a bit. I'm not trying to have a big day the next day.
The next day is shot, but you earned it for the previous two. So talk a little bit about switching gears, kind of. Talk a little bit about cold showers. And I found you talking about cold showers on TED Talk when I was doing research for this conversation. And so I think cold shower is also something that I've been doing for, the past 6 months, and just a great way to force yourself into some discomfort. Talk a little bit about the benefits of cold showers and what they mean to you.
Yeah. So, a lot of the stuff I talk about is endurance focused, or big adventure type things. And a lot of people, can get intimidated by that because it's a big challenge, or it's really hard, or, they're not ready for it, or, they're not physically capable of doing it yet. And that's fine. But one of the things that I talk about is cold showers, because, just because you're not ready to run a marathon doesn't mean you can't push yourself in other ways. And so cold shower therapy is basically a 30-day challenge to every day take a freezing cold shower. And what it helps you do is it helps you train, train your monkey brain to make hard, uncomfortable decisions. And the idea there is that, you might not be able to go run an ultra marathon and get to mile 40 and see how you react in that situation right now. But you can, you can take a shower, and everybody takes a shower every single day. And most people take the easy, comfortable, no questions asked decision, which is just, take a hot shower, turn it to the right, and just, have a nice shower and start your day. But most people don't realize it's actually a choice. And, whether they're doing it consciously or not, they're making a choice to make a comfortable choice. And the cold shower therapy challenge is recognize it's a choice and make the uncomfortable choice, which is take a freezing cold shower. And what happens is that when you're about to turn it to cold, you start asking a bunch of questions. So like, why am I doing this? This is going to be really uncomfortable. This is not going to be fun. I'm freezing my butt off. But if you decide to do it and you go through with it, you realize those are just thoughts, and that after 5 minutes, yeah, it was uncomfortable, it was cold, it was maybe a little difficult, but after 5 minutes, you're totally fine and everything's okay. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. But so the idea is that like once you're done with 5 minutes, you realize like, hey, I'm fine. There's no long lasting damages, and there's no, I'm not running into any real issues. And if anything, I feel way more awake and more energized, and I just did something difficult to start the day, so I can tackle challenges in the rest of my life in other ways. And what this does is over time, it starts training you that like those thoughts and those feelings that you have when you're in the shower are the same thoughts and feelings you have when you're about to do anything big or significant. And what those are, they're just thoughts, just feelings. They're not real. And what cold shower therapy trains you to do is that if you can go through 5 minutes of cold showers, where there's not really any consequences at play and there's not other people involved, it sort of trains up this muscle of making hard decisions, so that when it takes, it comes time to make bigger, more uncomfortable other decisions, and that voice pops up again, you can recognize it for what it is and keep pushing through anyways. So that's cold shower therapy. The TEDx talk you referenced is probably the worst shot TEDx talk in all of TEDx talks. Like the video production quality on it is horrible, but it's gotten relatively popular over the years. It's got a couple million views on it, and it's been a really helpful framework for me when I take on big challenges or need to do a mindset shift on what I want to do or big changes I want to make in my life.
Yeah, and that TED Talk will be in the show notes as well. The most interesting thing to me about cold showers and doing it personally is that I have resistance in the beginning before I even jump in the shower. And then once I'm in, it is painful or slightly painful for maybe 1 to 5 seconds on the body part that you're first putting into that shower. And then after the first 5 seconds, you realize, oh, this wasn't so bad, and you start to settle into it. And it teaches you to focus on your own breath. It teaches you that you could do anything for 5 minutes. And yeah, it's been such an incredible way that I've been able to train my mind to get myself to do something difficult almost every day. And I'm super grateful for just starting doing that, because it's just such a small thing that anyone really can do. And it's such a benefit.
Yeah, it's just, even now it's like they don't get easy. I get people all the time be like, oh yeah, but I like hot showers. Like, like I think we all like hot showers. Like that's not the point. Like it's one of these things that it's like this continual training. Doesn't matter how many times you do it. It's still hard. It's still uncomfortable, and your head still talks to you in stupid ways, being like, oh, are you sure you want to do this? This is probably a bad idea. But it's one of those things that never gets any better. It's just but like when you finish, you're always happy that you did it.
Yeah, always better off after having done it than you were before. I started getting into these because of doing phase 1 of Andy Frisella's Live Hard program and Live Hard challenge and the 75 Hard. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I think that it's right up your alley if you've ever done it or experienced it or thinking about doing it. I would highly recommend it.
Yep. I know quite a bit about 75 Hard, so yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was that you've been blogging since 2010, and that's 10 years pretty consistently, like I'm sure you've had some times when you've done it more, sometimes done it less, but you've been blogging since 2010, and I started blogging 6 months ago for my website, at least. Blogging online for, I had several stints when I was 13 and 15, and now I'm 25. So been blogging for a while, but never consistently. What are the biggest lessons you've taken away from the consistency of blogging online, and why have you been so consistent?
We could argue about the consistency. Like, I've been sticking with one thing for a while, which is good. I would say there's, definitely lulls and, times I'm more productive than others. I think people need to get you need to have a reason other than just writing a really popular blog to keep going. Mm-hmm. I've had non-Impossible branded blogs that I've done in the past, and some of them have done really well. But I get less excited about them because they're just not. I'm not personally as invested as in Impossible. But the real thing behind Impossible is that I started it not because I wanted to make a bunch of money or start a brand or do anything like that. I started it because I wanted to do something interesting with my life. And it's been that, the Impossible List has been that impetus to do something interesting with my life on a regular basis. And so one of the nice things about blogging through that framework is that I don't need to hit a revenue metric to feel happy with what I'm doing there. It's beneficial, and it keeps, it makes things easier to scale sometimes if you're not doing other stuff. But I'm also, I haven't put the pressure on that site either to, be a revenue stream. A lot of people talk about how do I monetize my blog, and they've got 50 subscribers, and maybe they need to focus on writing a little bit more before worried about monetization. And so that's one of the nice things that I've been able to do is I've been able to take a long view on blogging and writing in general. And it's given me a lot more runway where, other people, planned on, giving up a lot quicker, or they wanted, super, quick success, and they gave up after 5 months. But I've been able to, kind of keep at it, a lot longer. And one of the sayings, I've got is that, a lot of people, most people don't really fail. They just give up too soon. And I think a lot of people have really short timelines on what they think success looks like. And so by, scaling that out, you can be more successful than other people just by outlasting other people. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of, one of the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes complete sense. And why I enjoy reading your writing so much is because it doesn't seem like you're trying to grab money, right? It doesn't seem like you're trying to get to monetize every post or everything. You're just this is how I'm thinking. This is what I'm doing. Okay, great. You want to hear, I have these offerings too on the side, but it's not about putting it in your face every second. And it's a breath of fresh air on the internet when everyone's trying to grab your money and grab short term. If you can be a long-term thinker in terms of just putting yourself out there, it goes a long way, and the reader can tell.
Yeah, I think this is probably, I was talking to Taylor Pearson. I don't know if you know Taylor, but I was joking with him that he kind of incepts ideas in my mind. And I think one of the things that, one of the phrases he's used in the past that I'll probably adopt is it's play long-term games with long-term people. And a lot of people try to get in and they, make something happen right away, and then they bounce and they just churn through people. And I'm you find the games that you want to optimize for over, long periods of time. That gives you an advantage that other people just, literally won't have. Yeah,
absolutely. And one of the things that I love about your blog is that you're so honest. It seems like you're writing your 2018 review, your 2019 review, and you said at least in 2018 you're this year sucked. This didn't go well because and you're just so honest about it.
That was a bad year. Yeah.
Right. So So talk a little bit about being honest on the internet and just giving your real self. You even said at one point, like, I probably shouldn't even be sharing this, but as a reader, I love that. I love that you put that out there and were willing to take that risk of like, yeah, I'm not even making myself look good. And look at what I've done. Like, I've ran ultra marathons in 7 different continents, but I still can't do what I say I'm going to do or whatever it was. And I just thought that honesty was it came from such a good place. And it really gave me an indication of where your heart is at. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like if you just yourself, you don't have to like, remember, what you're saying. I think there's like 2 angles here. Like one, I think that there's this whole authenticity, vulnerability movement that like is maybe like gone a little too far. Like people like, I'm going to tell you about like raw, unfiltered things that like you probably should talk to with a therapist before you like just do it on an Instagram live. Like it doesn't seem like an appropriate thing, but like, I think a lot of times people just they want to like paper over, they want to create this image, and it's like, I think the 2018 thing, I was talking about a lawsuit that I was dealing with. There was a couple of other situations where I launched 777, this big epic plan to run 7 ultramarathons on 7 continents, and one race in, I jacked up my peroneal tendon and had to do 6 months of rehab and had to push a whole bunch of races I had planned, and it's like. Something like that is not like, I mean, I can't even fake that if I want to. Like if, I basically told people I'm going to run these races and then, one race in, that game plan has completely changed. And so, I might as well, if you cop to it, I think it's, a much more interesting story. And that comes back to, why I started the blog in the first place. The point of the blog was to do something with my life that was interesting and that was worth writing about. And if you start with that, like it's a better reasoning for you to do something interesting in the first place. And then on top of that, you don't have to worry about faking stuff. Like it's like, I feel like it's almost more work for people to fake stuff than it is just like to actually go do something interesting. And so it's like, if you can do something interesting and, that makes for a better blog, then like just go do the interesting thing. Like don't worry about all this other stuff. And yeah, like that's my like, I mean, I care a lot less about like what people think about me than like how I think of me and like how I, how if I'm enjoying my life or not. I'd much rather optimize for enjoying my life.
Yeah, I absolutely relate to that as someone who started a website and was like, okay, now I have a website. Now I have to do interesting things. Now I have to actually be someone that I would want to write about, right? And using that as the indicator leads you to choose different things, right? Like, so I started to meditate every day for 60 minutes and I started to, do these digital detoxes and challenges. And I mean, I was already doing these things before, but it's like, it's always in your head, right? Like, oh, I want to have things to write about. I want to be an interesting person. So, yeah, I really just relate to what you're talking about, probably 10 years earlier, but still relate to it as someone who's just coming up in the game.
Yeah, it's a good forcing function. It's like, part of the reason for 4x4x52 is like, it actually makes a better story. Like, it gives you a filter on how to make decisions. I did a trip with one of my friends a few years ago, and we had gone from the U.S. to Spain, and then we went to like the Netherlands, and we were trying to figure out like we were trying to figure out how to get back home, and there was a couple different routes we could do, and it was just his first big time like traveling abroad. And I'm like, well, we could go through, I had an event in Thailand that I was going to go to. And then like, there was basically a route that I could we could either come right back to the U.S. or we could continue going and like basically circumnavigate the world with the flight routes. And we sat down, we're like, well, I think it's cooler. Like it's definitely a longer trip, but like, I think it's cooler if like, we go to Thailand and then you go to like Taiwan, and then you come all the way home. Like that's like a lot more interesting than just like coming back through Newark and, transiting through New York. It's like, okay, well, if you have that as a filter, then all of a sudden, like, makes decisions easier, and it also opens you up to new experiences that you might not have otherwise. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that story, and it's something that I try to think about on a micro scale in terms of just taking the long route or just taking the scenic route, right? And taking the route that, might take a little longer, but will it be more beautiful? Will it give you a new experience on life? Will it make things more interesting? And I think that's just such an important guiding principle for myself, and it's cool to hear it in you as well.
Yeah.
So one thing that I wanted to ask you about was just like your relationship with pain, because you do all these challenges and you do all these crazy things, and it's like you have to have such a interesting relationship with pain. Talk to me a little bit about that.
What do you mean by that? Like, what would you like to know?
So, like, when you get to that point of like extreme pain, let's say you're, I don't know, on your 40th mile of your 48-mile run for your 2-day challenge, for your 4x4 by 48. You're on your 40th mile. Like, what's going through your head? Are you thinking? What does your mind go when you have negative self-talk? Talk to me about that.
Okay. So first of all, I think one of the things that I say a lot is expect things to be hard. A lot of people, the brand's called Impossible. It's about doing hard things. And then, a lot of people set out to go do something difficult, and then it's hard or it's uncomfortable or, it's painful, and they give up and they quit and they go home. And it's like, that's what you signed up for. Like, you signed up for Impossible. It's called Impossible. It's supposed to be hard. And so one of the things that I try to do is just, I expect things to be difficult. I expect it to be hard. And, maybe that makes things harder for me than it needs to be. But when you expect things to be hard and they are hard, I think the thing that kills people on these challenges or with pain is that, like, it's the unexpectedness is sometimes worse than the pain. When they're going along and all of a sudden it's like they're randomly hurt, like that could be more debilitating than the actual pain of the injury or the what you're going through. And so I think the first thing is a reframe at the beginning of any event or challenge, where you plan and you expect it to be hard. And if you do that, that makes a lot of stuff easier. And the other piece is that, like, when you're expecting it to be hard, like I run the races and the challenges for the times that it's difficult. Like, I don't run it for the finish line. I don't run it, to like, hey, I'm going to do this cool thing. What's interesting to me is the place you get in the middle of something really, really difficult, and like, what decisions do you make then? And do you quit and do you give up and you go home, or do you keep going? And how do you push through? And what do you have to do to keep going? And that's why I run those races. That's why they're interesting to me, and that's why I like doing it, because it forces you, to kind of face yourself. And you start to realize, like, there's a difference between like injury pain and like just pain of being out there for like 40 hours or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between the pain. You start to recognize it, and you just start to understand it more. And not all pain is bad. There's a lot of pain that's good. There's a lot of pain that leads to growth. And I think so many people are interested in nerfing the world to not deal with pain. They actually like really limit the upside of who they can become. And so that's not interesting to me. I'd much rather just I'd rather maximize, the potential than, minimize the difficulty. So I try to, be open to that type of stuff and really be, think about, think about the end goal too. Like, why are you out here? What are you trying to get out of this? What's the point of going through this? And if you have a good why, I think there's a Viktor Frankl quote, like, he who has a why can withstand any how. And he was basically like, studying, concentration camp, victims, and like who was, going to make it through, and who was, kind of giving up. And I think if you have a really, really good why, everything is a lot easier.
Absolutely. And the thing you talked about before, where you said that, you're doing these challenges so you could reach that point, and the difficult point to see how you'll react. And it reminds me of a Mike Posner. I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Posner's Walk Across America. Yeah.
Yep.
Super cool that he did that. And he recorded an album for himself so that he could listen to it, I believe, before he went on this walk. And it was really interesting because in one of his last tracks is like him talking about, before he set out for the journey, he recorded himself, and he's saying, hey, Mike, I'm doing this because, like, you're doing this right now. If you're in pain, you're doing this for that reason, to be in pain and to feel what you're feeling now. So as if to say, don't like wash away from the challenge. Don't run away from it. Like, actually lean into it. And it's just very powerful for anyone to apply to really any challenge they're going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's like a lot of the difficult times, like he signed up for the Walk Across America, or he committed to doing it, and then he partially, I think, to see who he could become and like what he could do, but also like to tell the good. I love the story framing on this stuff, because if you think about your favorite characters in movies and like what they would do at points, where things, everybody wants to live a good story, and then you get to the difficult part, and like a lot of people want to give up. And if you think about any good movie, any good story, any good book, if the main character just gave up when it got difficult, it's a short book and it's kind of a boring story. And so just kind of reminding yourself that like this isn't the end. And this is, the deciding factor. This is the point, that, you've done all this work for. Like, why are you going to go home now? Like, why not just keep going and at least get the good ending of the story? And I think if you have that framing on things, it's a lot easier to just, just to think through and to like wrap your mind around it. And then, you come to grips with the pain. And, it's just like the cold shower. It's like hard, it's difficult, it's uncomfortable, but like, most of the pain that you're feeling while you're running these things is not debilitating. It's not going to last forever. And you're probably, you're not going to remember it in 48 hours. And so, might as well just keep pushing and get through it.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the point about just living your life as if you're a character in a TV show or movie, because that's something that Mike Posner talked about as well, and something Joe Rogan talks about, being the hero of your own story. Mike Posner said he wanted to be able to look himself in the eyes and be his own hero. And that's just so powerful. And if you think, and if you're listening right now and you don't think of yourself as the hero of your own story, then do something difficult, right? Because I think that's the quickest way to actually turn that on its head and turn yourself on your head, is like, if you're not in the place you want to be, it's because you're not facing a challenge. And if you are facing a challenge, then just keep going, keep pushing, because you're on the right track. And I think it's hard for us to see, because in today's society, this is a blanket statement, so please bear with me. It's like we reward comfort, right? And 2020 has been incredibly difficult for a lot of people and has given us some challenge. And in a way, I think it's beneficial in the sense of 2020 and COVID has done a lot of death and a lot of bad things to our society. But in one way, it has made us challenged. And speaking from a generation that has grown up without many challenges, our grandfathers and ancestors dealt with World War and, thinking about bombs and just crazy stuff. We are scrolling all the time, and that's our challenge. Can we get out of the scrolling? So I think the challenge is a good thing, is my point, right? The challenge is what we should lean into.
I agree.
Yeah, man. And so talk to me about what your mindset was with just like who you were in 2010 and what going through these difficult challenges has turned you into as a human being, like your mental state.
Can you give me a little bit more context or direction?
Sorry, man. This is only my 24th interview, 25th. I'm still learning here about. Yeah,
no, it's good.
Yeah, but no, I mean, just by about 2010 Joel, he's somewhere mentally, and he has these aspirations. He has this bucket list, this impossible list of things that he wants to accomplish. And then you have 2020 Joel. What is the things that stand out to you other than the accomplishments, the mental things where you're like, you notice a difference between 2010 you and 2020 you?
So I'll frame this in a different way. But like one of the things that I think a lot of people think about impossible is, one of the statements that I'll say is like impossible, is not a statement, it's a challenge. And I think like 2010, Joel took impossible as like a statement, like, hey, this is impossible, and just like kind of left things at that, and just didn't push back too much, and just kind of I was like, okay, I guess I'll just do something easier. But the way I kind of look at things now, it's like impossible is a challenge. Like someone says something's impossible or something seems impossible, it means you should probably do it, or at least try for it. And it's a good orientation mechanism to be like, I'm gonna give that a shot. And a lot of people would be scared off of it, or the other thing that people do is like everything's impossible is nothing. Everything is possible, and I think that's a little naive because impossible things should be difficult. They should be hard, and there should be some chance of failure along the way. But I do think it's like the correct way to like orient yourself. It's like, hey, that seems hard. That seems like that is on the edge of what I think I can do. That means you should probably push on that and see, how far you can go. And that's, I would say, probably the biggest difference is just the change in how I view the word. Like I literally like see it on pages now, and kind of view it as a personal challenge. So I would say that's like probably the biggest mindset shift between the two.
That totally makes sense. So switching gears a little bit is like you have done all these challenges, and so I'm curious about your visualization and if any you do, and how you think about finishing and what you think about during the challenges and what you think about before. Do you have any routine or anything that someone listening could grab a hold of and do themselves?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
You're good. I'm wondering if you have any visualization routine or anything that you do on a consistent basis, or maybe before challenges. What type of visualization do you do, if any?
So I don't do visualization very much. I write things down. I find if I say them, like I'm going to do this, or not necessarily to other people. I feel like people get caught up in traps where you tell people and they like to tell other people what they're going to do versus what they actually do. But I find that like writing down to myself what I'm going to do, even if I write it in a notebook, and then like I'll put it away, like and then I'll open it up and I'll find like I actually accidentally did it, like not even always intentional. It just kind of like it orients yourself to go do that. The other thing that I'll do is I try to, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I try to envision the things that would make me quit. And I try to think about ahead of time, like again, this is expecting something to be hard, but I try to anticipate the things that will be difficult and make me want to give up. And then when they happen during the race, again, I'm not surprised about it. I think the difficulty again is the pain or the challenges are one thing, but like being surprised is almost worse because it's emotionally more difficult to deal with. It feels like you're thrown off. And so if you can anticipate like the things that would make you want to quit, and then when they show up, you kind of envision them more like bosses on a video game level. You're like, oh yeah, like of course, like that's what you do. You gotta get through this boss to get to the next level. Like you're not surprised in a video game when that happens. You hear the music speeding up, like you move through the last door or whatever, and it's like there's a boss. Like that's how video games are structured. That's how those are created. And so if you think about events or challenges that you do like that, then like when you get to those difficult challenges, you're really not surprised, and you can just be like, okay, I know, I knew what I was getting myself into. So yeah, I would say that's kind of like the anti-visualization, but
makes
it
sense.
Still works.
It makes sense, and it's certainly helpful to list out what you are what you're gonna think about in the future and what you can then prepare for. So, talk a little bit about what challenge right now you're excited about and you're thinking about right now, because I think we spend a lot of time thinking about the past and talking about the past, but talk to me about the future and what you're excited about today.
So one of the things that I've been working on the last year is really just like organizing my life and my business structures to be more advantageous. For a long time, like I kind of like scaled things up to a point where things were nice and I didn't really have to worry about anything, and like things were good, but I wasn't necessarily making the progress that I wanted to be making. And so about a year and a half ago, I stopped nomading around and I got a place in Austin, and I started kind of like scaling up a bunch of different businesses. But one of the things that I've got a bunch of side businesses that I've built that are non-Impossible related. I'm going to say called a meal planning site and a mobility movement coaching app that we've built. And I'm kind of stepping out of those, kind of handing the reins off to other people to run those. And then, my focus is on Impossible. We're scaling up some of the training programs that we have. I have a couple different events. We did our first event in a long time called the Longest Day Race in June of this year. It was the longest day of the year, and we ran around a track. We got 20 people around the world basically find a local track, run around it from sun up to sundown, and count your laps and see how far you can go. And so we're going to be doing more events like that, like scaling up the apparel business that we have there, as far as encouraging people to push their limits and do something impossible, and wear their impossible gear while they're doing it. And then we have some physical products too. So I've got my own personal physical challenges, but like we also have some business challenges, and that's been a little bit of the focus the last few months. But it's been really, really good, and it's one of those ones where these mental challenges that you take on, you get ready to do, personally, kind of prepare you in other ways to take on other types of challenges that, you wouldn't necessarily expect. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for taking the time, Joel. Where can people find you on social media and find more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me at Joel Runyon on social media, and you can find Impossible at impossiblehq.com and at impossiblehq across all social stuff. And yeah, I mean, you can jump on the newsletter and hit up YouTube. We're doing a bunch more media stuff. We're doing a bunch more video stuff the next few weeks and months. And so those are the other things that I'm excited about doing. In the coming months.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. It is such a pleasure hearing your story and learning more about you. And thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
That was my conversation with Joel Runyon. If you enjoyed this conversation, let me know on Twitter at HeyDannyMiranda. Love your feedback. Also, love that you're listening to the final seconds. Appreciate you as always. Have an incredible day. Have an incredible weekend if you're listening to this on the weekend. And that's all we got for today, folks. See you in the next one.